The president has recently delivered his State of the Nation address for 2026. And I think for us in the agricultural sector, there may be some people that do not follow these things quite closely. But I think we should do, because what the State of the Nation address does, it provides us a sense of what the folks in the union building are thinking about the broad direction of the country. And yes, they spend a bit of time taking stock of what are some of the achievements that they have actually been able to bring about for the country for the past few years. But the most important aspect is what they outline for their agenda for the coming year. And certainly this time around, there are a number of things that in the South African agricultural sector that we worry about. And yes, on a day-to-day activities, we are talking a lot about the biosecurity aspect, foot and mouth disease. But if we take a step back and we look at our sector, there's a lot more other things that are important which actually help us to have a sector that we are proud of, because we are proud of the South African agricultural sector for all of the things that it has achieved. I mean, being the only African country in the top 40 global agriculture exporters. Not that we should be proud to be the only African countries. We want more African countries to be there. But for them to be amongst those key exporters, they have, of course, to improve their agricultural productivity, make sure that they can have the quality of products that the world market will demand, and, of course, improve a whole range in their agricultural systems, which is exactly what South Africa, in the past few years, have been able to do and achieve. And in part, we've leaned on technology and all of the other aspects that have delivered these gains. We also pride ourselves of being the most food secure country in the Sub-Saharan Africa region. And we've discussed this quite at length here on AgriView, where people say, hey, how can you talk about being the most food secure country while we have so many South Africans struggling? And they are right about that, because if you look at the rate of poverty in this country and the percentage of people that are living below the poverty line, I mean, it's a double digit. It's quite difficult. But we have to understand that is not just the farming problem. That has to do with the broad socio-economic policy problems of South Africa. We have a challenge of high unemployment in this country, over 30%. So if there is no income in those households, then we will start to struggle with what we term as an income poverty problem, which we think is what actually affects South Africa most acutely when we are thinking about some of these poverty problems that are in other households. But the one thing that as a country we can be sure of, which this is to the benefit of the South African agricultural sector, or this is because of the robust agricultural sector, is the fact that we do have supplies. I mean, you look at what we can sustain ourselves with and what we need from other people. We are quite frankly at a position where we send out about half of what we produce. So there are all of these things that we are actually priding ourselves with the achievements that we've been able to make as a country. But that is not a given. The fact that the sector has more than doubled since 1994 in value and in volume terms doesn't mean that over the next 30 years we will continue to see the same robust growth. And by the way, we are not trying to be negative here to say, oh, the future is unpredictable, things are so difficult ahead. No, things can be awesome ahead, but there are certain things that needs to be addressed, which exactly then what you tend to listen to when you are looking at the SONA, because there are near-term problems, but also there's a sense of asking yourself, is there a direction and a clarity as to where we are going? And I think in this State of the Nation address, we began to see some of those things. What am I talking about? The aspect of water is something that is always in South Africans' mind. And I know that the newspapers write a lot about it when the people in the cities are having some difficulties. And that's correct, because that's where a large population of people are sitting at. And you can't afford to have a situation where many South Africans are struggling to actually have water so that they can continue with their daily activities. But the farming sector has also struggled with some of the water issues. Either it's a licensing or it's the access, it's infrastructure. I mean, I can tell you stories of the folks from where I come from in the Eastern Cape in a dairy industry where they've struggled in a dairy industry with quite a bit on getting some water in some of the facilities, and that has led to all kinds of difficulties in those facilities. Now, the president said something that was useful in his State of the Nation address, where he says, look, over the next 3 years, we've been able to put about 156 billion rands, which we will spend on upgrading the infrastructure, but also thinking about the building of the dams in certain provinces in South Africa. And I think the building of those dams is something that will assist a great deal on ensuring that on the water side, South Africa moves forward. Now, this is just an intention that is being put in the SONA, as well as a direction. A lot of work lies on the departments to say, are they going to be able to follow through and do all of these things that the SONA have outlined? That's the one aspect. The other aspect that I'm looking at here on some of the things that have come out of the SONA is that the president talked about the network industries. I mean, the improvements that we are making and we need to continue to make in the rail, in the road, as well as at the ports. I started off by talking about the idea of South African agricultural sector being amongst the top 40 global agricultural exporters. You cannot do that without the ports that are functional, but you also can't achieve that without the railway lines that are efficient. There's a lot of work that goes in that direction and demanding the results from Transnet because it's the one entity that everyone can engage. But there's not sufficient discussion that we are having with the municipalities. I mean, you can still today talk to folks in the Free State, in the Northern Cape, in the Eastern Cape, and many other provinces in this country that will tell you that after this summer rainfall and the destruction in the small roads, some of these municipalities take quite a long time to fix the roads. And I think that the municipalities must do that because the transaction costs, if the roads are not fixed, that the agribusinesses, farmers, and even the new entrant farmers are struggling with to get their product to the marketplace, to get their product to export markets. Those are all of the things. So the president highlighting this, I hope that the municipalities and many other stakeholders that are involved in this, they take this message and then they begin to think about how they're going to roll out various programs to address this particular aspect that the president had talked about. The other thing that I particularly liked, and I think many people in agriculture will, is the fact that the exports is not just only of saying, let's go where we've been going. I mean, he made the point of saying he wants to see South Africa's agricultural exports continuing and growing into various markets. And he cited the recent visits that they've had in Asia, Middle East, and the other aspect. The core thing then now that we need to do is the work that we've discussed here in AgriView, which is that of building capacity in the state in terms of making sure that we have the right people and the capability to actually be able to continue to negotiate trade agreements for South Africa. We have appropriate staff, we have appropriate knowledge infrastructure to support that process so that it's not just the presidents and people visiting the countries, but there's a follow-through support. But also, again, dealing with the SACU aspects. The president did not talk about SACU, but I'm saying it that if we are to achieve our exports approach, we also have to deal with the dilemmas that we face within the SACU area. What is the SACU? Watch some of the sections that we have actually discussed here in AgriView within our profile. But in short, it's really this aspect of the Southern African Customs Union, where South Africa cannot go and negotiate free trade agreement on its own, but it has to go with these countries that are within our region, the likes of Lesotho, Eswatini, Botswana, Namibia. But these countries do not share the same urgency as South Africa, I would argue that way. And I think that they slow us in our ambition to get into the export market. So we need to refine SACU. So these are all of the aspects that I think they fall under that aspect of dealing with the trade-related aspect, which the president eloquently put forward. And I do think that we've been able to achieve some level of success. In 2025, our agricultural exports were at a record $15.1 billion US dollars, but to continue to grow, we need then to deal with this export. But the export story, other people always think this is something that supports the big farmers that are out there. If you are farming in a small farm in Bizana, Flagstaff, somewhere in the Northern Cape, it has nothing to do with you. And I'll tell you this, it has everything to do with you. Because if the exports do not go out, we get a situation now where there's a supply glut in the South African market. And that supply glut actually lowers the prices. Now, when you are going to your local market to sell your product, you will find that as a farmer, you are getting lesser price than you would get because there's all of this supply that is coming from the big farmers that you say the export markets are for them. And as a result of that, you are actually feeling some profitability squeeze on your side. So the key thing to do is that we open export markets, others that can export, they push their product out, they create space for you to sell in the local market. And in the end, we all benefit on the exports, either directly or indirectly. And even the workers, they benefit, because if there's all of this export revenue that comes into the country, it sustains at least the financial aspects and the conditions of these farms, and they create your jobs, they sustain, they pay wages. So all of this is actually for the good of everyone. So I very much like that idea of talking about the exports. And of course, the issue of knowledge infrastructure. I mean, it would have been difficult for the president to skip this one. And he did speak about the 10,000 extension officers that over time South Africa will have to employ. There's no clear time frame, rightly so, because, I mean, it would be a policy mistake to say tomorrow 10,000 young people must come to the department. No. But these are people that over time the Department of Agriculture has to think about how do they bring them in. Because this idea I've been talking about of knowledge infrastructure is important, so that the farmers, they get all of the people that can assist them in various commodities, in various regions. In the past, we used to have a robust extension officers program in this country. But over time, we've lost that capacity. And others that are at the commercial level, they do get assistance through agronomists that are coming from seed suppliers and input suppliers, or any other suppliers of inputs that you need from your farm, either livestock or otherwise. But if you are a small or medium scale farmer and you are not really one of the regular customers of these input suppliers, you may not get the same level of attention that actually you need in your farm. Which is why then having these extension officers is important. But it can't just be any extension officers. These people need to actually be properly trained, and we have to make sure that it's people who are proud to be part of this sector, and they know that they are here to serve the farmers, but also serve the bigger picture. Because, I mean, people think about and talk about agriculture as if we are just farming, but we are doing quite a lot more. Everything that we drink, we eat, we wear, furniture in your offices and your homes, all of that is grown agriculturally. So we're actually doing quite a lot for society. And these are the people then that needs to actually understand and appreciate that value that they add. And I think that thinking about beefing up the knowledge infrastructure for the sector is something that was important. And I must close by saying this. I've mentioned all of these things and not talked about the foot and mouth disease, but the president did not skip that one. He did hone in it and talked about when the vaccines are expected. And I'll say this, by somewhere towards the end of March, the expectation is that we should have some level of a good supplies of vaccines in this country, so that the livestock farmers, especially in the most affected areas, I mean, I'm thinking here about the Natal Midlands, those are some of the folks in the dairy industry that are feeling the impact. Those folks that are in the beef industry, we see the costs and the impact on that. And I think that there was a sufficient devotion of the speech towards that aspect of in saying, okay, the Department of Agriculture declaring the state of disaster must then put resources together, work with the police, with the local government to see what can be done to manage this. This is all to say that the State of the Nation address was not just a talk and something that must be ignored. I think, in fact, this one mattered a lot more for us in the agricultural sector, which is why we thought at AgriView we should take this week and really pull up some of the aspects that we think are important for the farmers to keep on the back of their mind. But now these are promises, these are guidance on what needs to be done. And I think that by watching us distilling this as a farmer, as an agribusiness, you have to take some of these points, and as you visit your local government offices, keep reminding them that, listen, guys, the president said this, I'm in your office now to ask about ABC, because the local offices are really the face and the feet of a government, and those are the people that need to deliver on this message that was shared in the State of the Nation address. And folks, we are able to distill and read these things because we get a lot of support from various people. And I must say, we've been able to record some of these segments because of our good friends at Nedbank that make sure that they sponsor us. And if you are watching the AgriView for the first time, make sure that you subscribe, because every Thursday we drop new episodes. And spread the link and share it with your friends. Thank you so very much for watching.